Hey everyone, welcome back to My Movie Story. It's Brian here, and this is the show where we interview people from all walks of life and backgrounds about their three special movies. So if you've been watching us for a while, you'll know the categories. If you don't, I'll give you a quick rundown. So we talk to people about their all-time favorite movie, the film that changed them in some way or changed their perspective about the people or life or the world, and then the film that they think everyone must see. So this is not really about giving you a rundown of the plot or how many stars or percentage you got on Rotten Tomatoes. We're not about that. This is about the person we're speaking to, their connection with the film, their perspective on it. So hopefully this will give you a new perspective on this film if you've seen it before, or if you haven't seen it at all, and maybe normally you wouldn't watch these kinds of films, hopefully you'll go and check them out. So our guest today is Sam. He's a devoted father. He's 41 years old, and he grew up in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. And Sam and I went to high school many, many moons ago. We hung out. We were chums back then, and recently we've just reconnected, which is great. And Sam really considers himself to be a down-to-earth guy, which I can totally attest to. He's a creative guy. He actually is a composer. So he's composed classical and piano music. He also writes poetry. And not too long ago, he recorded a piece of music with Prague and Budapest symphony orchestras. So that's pretty impressive. And we're going to get a little bit of a snippet of that later on. And he's also a professional dad joke teller. He has his own TikTok channel for dad jokes. And no one laughs at them, but I think they're funny. I'm a dad. I tell dad jokes, and maybe he'll share a couple with us. We'll see how we go. And he's an avid Chelsea Football Club fan and into Premier League soccer as well. He's traveled extensively. He's been all around the world, and he's two of his favorite destinations are Iceland and Alaska. So really interesting bio there. And Sam, it's great to have you on My Movie Story. How you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Thank you, Brian. What an unbelievable intro. My head is huge now.
Well, it's you wrote it, man. I'm just reading your life story. So yeah. So I remember hanging out with you in high school, and I didn't know back then that you were so musically talented. It was only just when we sort of caught up recently that you shared that with me, and I'm like, damn, this guy's conducting like a professional orchestra here. So tell us a little bit about that, like your music, and how did you come about to conduct an orchestra? Like, how did that all happen?
No worries. Look, I mean, I've had this talent and attraction to piano since I was probably 6 or 5 years old, long back, and been doing composing for a very, very, very long time. Um, very much into classical compositions, film scores, and and because of my background as well, I tend to write music that is very Eastern influenced or Middle Eastern influenced, but also um, fusion with the Western classical music. So up till probably 2 or 3 years ago, um, the only serious thing that I've done about my music is put it up on into SoundCloud or some YouTube videos, but um, I decided to take it very seriously, um, and that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yep.
And I wrote 4 pieces to be orchestrated, basically, or prepared to be orchestrated. And I worked with a guy in Brisbane, um, who is actually a quite a famous, I should say,
Yep.
guy who's have done films in the US and Europe,
Cool.
and he listened to my music and he said, "Look, I can help you with the actual writing of it and the orchestration of it and dividing it into different instruments and things like that." So I worked with him very, very closely on that for almost, I would say, a year on that, on those four
Wow.
pieces.
Yep.
It's very time consuming because
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's you have to drill down and it's back and forth until you get it spot on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's a very involved process,
very
and
involved, very complex process.
yeah, and it shows in the
Yeah,
finished product that you shared with me. I was just like, I was blown away. It was so good.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, man. Really appreciate it. And I think
Mm.
it is everything that I have inside,
Yeah.
trying to I guess express it. And yeah, and I really wanted to make something out of it, so I contacted an orchestra in Prague initially, and had a 4-hour session with them. The whole experience of me just listening to the music that was played by 50-odd piece orchestra was
Mm.
just mind blowing. Such an out of body
Yep.
experience.
Yeah. To
And
go from
then
your head to hear an
from
orchestra
head to piano
play it.
to listening to this
Yeah. That's
being
really
played
cool.
by a full orchestra was just an amazing experience.
Mm. Yep. And
And
any creative person, that's really
mm,
what they dream of. Like,
mm,
I've written a few stories. So if like one of them got made into a TV show or movie, I'd be like, wow, like
mm,
this is what was in my head. But it's always, I imagine, slightly different from what was in your head, but as close to that as possible. And I think to be able to hear
mm,
music in your mind and then have it
mm,
played by an orchestra or a band to get it to that stage, that's incredible. It's a huge achievement. Like I thought
mm.
making a song on GarageBand on the iMac years ago was an achievement for me, but yeah, I've got nothing on you, mate.
No, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Now, look, so I mean, look, family was very appreciative of it. They really enjoyed it. So friends and family as well.
Yeah,
It's nice to get that kind of reaction
yep,
and feedback.
yeah.
Um, and I repeated
Something
this
that will
in
live forever. That piece of
exactly
music
right,
will live
exactly
forever.
right,
Who knows how many lives that's going to impact, mate? Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah,
so
absolutely
cool
spot on. Yeah,
for sure. Yep.
yeah.
And now you're on our podcast, which is, I know it's a very high honor as well. So, so yeah, you can add that to the creative legacy. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
Nice.
But very cool. And some of the films you've chosen that we're going to talk about focus
Hmm.
on music and have,
Yes.
very iconic music in there
Mm-hmm.
and use music around the plots and
Mm-hmm.
some interesting songs or really compelling score. So that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a theme here
Mm-hmm.
with your films. And yeah, so if anyone here is new to the podcast, how this works is Sam's going to tell us about his three films one by one. And we're going to start with the film that Sam thinks everyone must see. And this is an old one. It's regarded a classic of cinema. And if you've got a spare 3 or 4 hours, it's worth a watch, which is a hard amount of time to find in today's life. But if you can binge watch a TV show for that many hours, I'm sure you could watch a movie for that long. So that's enough from me. But Sam, can you tell us what this film is and just sort of set it up for us?
Yeah, no worries. No, look, it's an absolute classic of a movie and film. It's Lawrence of Arabia.
Come on, man!
For over a quarter of a century, controversy has raged around the name of T.E. Lawrence. No man of our time has drawn upon himself so much praise and so much criticism. Lawrence of Arabia.
It was done in the 60s, I should say. David Lynn was the director who was responsible for such an absolute masterpiece.
Mm.
And I guess the synopsis of the story or the plot revolves around a general in the British Army who's basically sent to Arabia. So this is the place between Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and that was in World War One back in that time. And
Yep.
the whole purpose of him going there was to understand and understudy the tribes, the Arab tribes,
Yep.
the Bedouins at the time. They were completely divided.
Mhm.
And his purpose was basically to try and unite those tribes in order to defeat the Ottoman conquerors at the time from Turkey. So his story is basically as an explorer, as a traveler, as an influencer.
Yep.
He goes there and he's embedded into their world,
Right.
and into their culture, and
Yep.
into how they sort of live in this amazing life and amazing landscape in the desert, which they call their their country.
Yep.
T. Lawrence himself, as a man and as a character, is very interesting. He's an explorer. He's a writer. He's a cartographer.
Right.
He wrote an amazing book called Seven Pillars of Wisdom. So himself as a human, as a character, is quite amazing.
Yeah.
And he basically I would say revolutionized the whole way of conducting war. He was basically the starting point of what they call these days guerrilla warfares.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So essentially, he would basically see a line of troops. He would only have a few soldiers with him, and
Right.
perhaps a Rolls-Royce armored car. He would surprise them, appear, violent, action, and then move off. So strike and move, strike and move, strike and move.
Yeah.
So it's not like a conventional warfare where you basically have, armies from both sides, and the old-fashioned way of sort of attacking each other. So he sort of revolutionized that way. And if have you heard of something called Chindits before?
No.
Okay, so Chindits is sort of early SAS, early commandos,
Right.
living it rough in the jungle, and having those physical and mental tests to do these kind of very difficult, I guess, what do you call them?
Like missions and stuff.
Missions and things like that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And then basically later on, his influence basically goes all the way to World War II. So his cousin, his name is from memory, I think his name is Wingate. And
yep.
basically, yeah. So Wingate, who was T.L. Lawrence's cousin, actually was involved in the 1948 war, when Israel basically became an independent country
Yep.
in the Middle East, and so he was sort of involved there. So his legacy basically is, it's used basically all over.
Everlasting. Yeah.
Everlasting.
Still continues to have a legacy today. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the film Lawrence is played by Peter O'Toole, the legendary British actor. And from my understanding, he plays this soldier Lawrence, who his superiors don't really take him very seriously, and he's kind of put into the desert on this mission, and sort of like, because they need to do something with him and put him somewhere, and it completely transforms him, doesn't it? Like he's a completely changed guy as a result of his time in the desert. And
absolutely. I mean, the desert actually completely changed his perspective, not just on life, but how things are conducted, and how things are perceived by other people, and their priorities and how they view things. And to be honest with you, Peter O'Toole played the role amazingly well. Him and Omar Sharif was another sort of legend of the cinema from the 60s. Actually, Omar Sharif and David Lynn, who's the director, straight after Lawrence, they made Dr. Zhivago, which is another absolute classic.
Yes. It's on my list. Haven't seen that, but it's I've heard good things about that.
So I mean, these guys, just sort of to give you a background about the movie, they actually spent 9 months or 10 months out in the desert filming. You wouldn't have any of that these days. I mean, if you want a background or a landscape, you would do CGI and these kind of things.
That's
but
Or they might just go
spending
films in the desert of like California or Utah, and then, like you said, yeah,
exactly.
digitally change the background. But back in
Yeah,
those days, films were made. It was like they threw these guys in right in the middle of it, didn't they? You know, and
yeah,
that's why it's so realistic and so convincing in so many ways.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they did it in a place called Aqaba. Aqaba is the south of Jordan, and it's prickly heat. It goes to 50 something degrees during that time. So imagine
Gosh.
yourself as an actor, all the crew,
Yeah.
everybody around you.
It would have been a
Um,
grueling shoot, I can only imagine. And it probably shows on the screen, like the
yeah,
sweat's probably real, and the look of the dehydration and just the being, just kicked in the butt by the desert. It's probably all real, I can only imagine.
exactly, exactly. And look, even the simplest things like, um, I remember that I watched an interview many years ago, um, of Peter O'Toole. Actually, he was explaining one of the scenes. One of the scenes was him basically riding with others, a bunch of camels, and going all the way to the end of the basically where the camera angle was. And what when they finish, what they have to do, they have about 200 or 250 guys working to sweep back the desert because they're using that same scene for something
Right.
else. So all the foot trails that you
Yeah.
have of the camels, they had to basically sweep it manually.
Gosh.
It took, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours just to shoot maybe like like a 5 minute,
Yeah.
five
Who had
five
that
minute
job? Yeah.
5 minute sequence.
Wow. That dedication is just incredible.
Incredible. Yeah.
And with this film, I guess one of the other things that makes it so iconic is its score. Its musical
Yes.
score. Yeah.
Mm,
So yeah, being a music man yourself,
mm,
well, yeah, give us your sort of take on the score and how it
mm.
serves the film and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no worries. So, I mean, I guess one of the most iconic composers of music from that era, Maurice Jarre, is a French composer, and he was basically accountable initially for this movie, believe it or not, only for about 10% of the music. So the producers at the time, they had somebody else in mind, and that somebody else in mind came in and he played a piano part that was supposed to be the main theme for the music, and the producers were looking at each other going, that just doesn't sound right.
Right.
Maurice came, who who played just a very beautiful melody to start the theme for Lawrence right at the beginning of the movie. And it's such a captivating piece of music that basically it sort of takes you to this desert world. It's
Mm.
with that if you close your eyes and you kind of you will imagine you are in the desert, you are in this
Yeah,
world,
that's
you are
right.
surrounded by Bedouins and
Yep.
Arabs and things like that. So
Mm.
and that's the magic of music, that
Yeah,
it transcends language, cultures, everything.
that's right.
So
Yep.
um
Yeah, and
I
it, and
mean,
it like you said, it transports you into a time and in a place, and it's like a character in the movie itself, isn't it? The music, and it's
abs-
like if you think of
absolutely.
some of the greatest scores of all time, like the
Mm,
music is like it moves the story along. Like, could
mm,
you imagine Jaws without that iconic score, or
mm,
Star Wars even, and I
mm.
think yeah, the best movie scores came out of the 20th century, probably the 60s, 70s, and 80s were the best movie scores of all time. Yeah, which
Exactly,
I'm sure
exactly.
you probably agree with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how did this
Mm.
film come into your life, Sam? How did you discover Lawrence of Arabia?
That's good. Very good. Very good question. To be honest with you, I actually I watched it when I was for the first time when I was a teenager, and the reason I watched it wasn't because of the movie. The reason I watched it is because of the music.
Mm.
So I did have the actual soundtrack at the time. It was
All right.
yeah, and I was listening to the tracks, and beautiful tracks. And once I listened to the music, I said, maybe I have to watch the movie. But like you said,
Yeah.
it's a 3 hour movie,
Yeah.
and you do definitely need to take breaks in between.
Yeah, it needs an intermission, doesn't it? Yeah.
And like in the 60s and the 70s, the speed of the movie is extremely slow, moving from one scene to another scene,
Mm,
and there's very long takes,
yeah,
very, very long takes. I'll give you an example. The one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and I did share it with you a while
that's
back,
right. Yeah.
yeah, ago, is a scene where you see Omar Sharif for the first time on screen, which is basically it's a very long shot, and it's a mirage in the desert, and you only see sort of a stick coming out very, very far away, and you don't know what that stick is, and the stick moves closer and closer and closer to the camera until you find out it's actually Omar
Yep.
Sharif on a horse, and he
Yeah.
starts shooting at the guy who's stealing water from his
Yep.
from his thing. So that scene originally, David Lynch said it was actually the first cut was around the 10 to 12 minute mark, right?
Wow.
Imagine
Yeah.
imagine just waiting for this guy to come in to the
Yep.
screen for 12 minutes.
Yeah.
They shot on it to 8 minutes. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That
I mean,
requires a lot of patience. Yeah. Yeah. So
you got a lot of
the story has to keep moving.
the
So.
series. We don't. I mean, these days the editing it's amazing. You cut from one scene to another scene to another scene, and it just makes it very sort of exciting to watch. But
Mm.
back in the days, it's a very, very slow,
Yeah,
a slow
and
process.
if it's
Yeah.
done right today, if it's
Mm,
done right,
mm.
those slow takes can be really effective. If it's done
Exactly.
right, like
Mm,
a
mm,
slow pan in a horror film, and it eventually stops, and you see the dark figure standing in the corner. And there's a horror film called Hereditary with
mm,
Tony Collette and
mm,
Gabriel Byrne, and there's a lot of those slow shots, but they're very
mm,
effective. So
mm.
yeah, and that shot you were telling me about and shared with me, it was like, what a great introduction for a character, because it's like,
That's right.
what is this materializing on the horizon? And
That's
as
right.
the other
Mm,
Arab
mm, mm,
discovers who it is, like you just
mm.
see him completely change, and then
The-
the movie then really kicks into motion from that point. So yeah,
That's right.
great,
Yeah, yeah.
a great
Mm,
scene. Yeah,
mm.
yeah. So overall, like, why is this a film you think everyone needs to see, Sam? Like, as a must see movie? Because
I must say, yeah,
yeah, what makes it a must see movie?
it combines. I think it combines amazing story, and I guess the message behind the story, amazing cinematography,
Mm,
just purely amazing cinematography.
yeah, couldn't agree
Um,
more. Yeah,
the actors, superstar actors, and they still are. I mean, Peter O'Toole is just an absolute legendary actor. Omar Sharif, the same thing. Um, and the music, like you said, it
Mhm.
just I guess the magic combination between all three just makes it really worthwhile
Yep,
um,
definitely.
watching
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
and would you consider it like is it a perfect movie, if there is such a thing? Would you hold it in that kind of esteem?
Yeah, Steven Spielberg. Um, I watched an interview about his favorite movie, and he said Lawrence of Arabia, in his eyes, were the perfect movie. So
Ah,
If Steven Spielberg, who is one of the greatest directors of all time,
yep.
thinks this movie is the greatest, it has to be something special about it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
for
Like
sure.
so
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. Yeah,
he knows the guy knows what he's talking about.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
and like, hopefully for anyone here watching this who's not familiar with the film or would
mm,
consider a film from that time,
mm,
yeah, like this
mm,
is why we do this show, is to
mm,
bring more light and awareness to these films, and to see something different, and you'll be
mm,
hugely rewarded for it, as you've put so well, Sam. Like, it just ticks
mm,
all the boxes, and from what I saw of it, I haven't seen the whole thing, but from what
mm.
I saw of it, I was really impressed, and I'm looking forward to taking a whole day off work to watch it again. Because I think we'll need that amount of time, and then just to process it afterwards. But
Sure.
yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia. Awesome, awesome. All right, well, let's move on then, if we can,
Mm,
mate, to your second film.
mhm,
And music again features strongly in this film, and this is the
mhm,
film that you consider really changed you as a person, your life, your
mhm,
perspective, and has had a
mhm,
lasting impact on you personally.
mhm,
So yeah, can you tell us
mhm.
what that film is, and share it with us?
Yeah, it's I guess the Oscar winner, Shine. story of David Halcott was one of the most prolific pianists in Australian history.
Fine Line Features presents one of the year's best films. It's electrifying acting and filmmaking.
The performance, I guess, by Jeffrey Rush winning an Oscar for it, just a genius performance.
Oh, one of the
by
best.
him. Amazing performance by him.
Mm.
And I guess in terms of your question, which is how it sort of impacted my life, or impact on myself in general. I think it's two different stages. So when I first watched it many years ago, or somewhere in the 90s, I suppose, when it came out, it was about the inspiration, reaching your goals, and follow your heart to become a musician. Especially at that time, I started doing some compositions myself and playing the piano. It was just a sort of an inspirational movie to take that road, to take that path. And
absolutely, given his struggles as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And he overcame it. Yeah,
exactly. Very true.
Yeah.
And I guess in a different period of my life now that I'm a father, it's also about that relationship between David Halcott and his father.
Mm.
And the way it sort of impacted me, I guess, is you have to sort of understand and juggle the way you nurture your kids and trying to sort of direct them in their talent, whether it's piano or singing, whatever it might have been. It's about having this sort of balance between a really controlled way of conducting your parenting versus complete freedom. So you have to have that kind of balance. I think.
Yeah.
I think his father was very extremely strict.
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't really know how to deal with that talent at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Yeah, like the father it was a very intense relationship, and the father was like, yeah, once he saw the talent that his son had, he expected him to be the success, and he was very, very hard on him. And to the point where it was like borderline abuse, or well, not even borderline, it was abuse. It was a violent household that he grew up in. Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about David Halcott himself, and for anyone who's seen the film, and the reason Jeffrey Rush won the Oscar was he plays his character so well, and he talks like a million miles a minute, and he's not really making sense, and he's stammering all the time, and Jeffrey Rush nailed it and deservedly got that Oscar. So who was this David Halcott guy, and what was going on for him personally?
Yes, I mean, look, he was a very very talented pianist, and he grew up in a very I would say mediocre to very poor family, and they really couldn't afford many things. So his father was basically very keen for him to and nurture him to play piano and to learn piano, and push him to learn all the difficult pieces, I suppose, and compete in different competitions locally to try to get some level of recognition. And once he did, so he got some recognition, and he was offered scholarships overseas. I think initially to the US, but his father said no, ripped the paper out. I don't know if you remember the scene. He put it in the fireplace. So that was
that's right. Yeah.
a very heartbreaking scene. And then later on, he got to know a lady. I can't remember the lady's or the character's name, but she basically was also encouraging him to go to and try out in the UK. So eventually she arranged some kind of scholarship as well for him in the UK. and he escaped, even though his father said you can't go, and
Yep.
did this same sort of resistance. But he was very determined, and he left and he went there.
Yep.
And while he was there, I guess, and this is sort of, I guess, where his breakdown happened. He tried to learn a piece, which is considered one of the most difficult pieces in classical music, is Rachmaninoff's piano concerto number 3.
Okay.
It's extremely complicated. It's a 3-part concerto, and it's extremely complicated to learn, to play, to master. And I guess in the back of his head, he wanted to go through that because he wanted to go back to his father eventually and say, you know what, I have learned this. I've
done
to
it.
reach that level. I've done it. I've reached that level.
Yeah, he wanted his father's approval, even though his dad was so hard on him, didn't he? Yeah.
Very true. And during that process, while he was playing it on concert, he collapsed, and he had this. I can't remember the mental condition he had, but he needed shock therapy, and shock therapy made it even worse.
Yep.
And he developed this speech impediment at the end that impacted his life.
Yep, that's right. Because we meet David Helfcott. He's a young boy, so he's played by 3 actors. He's a young boy, and then the teenage version, he's played by that Australian actor. What's his name? He showed up in a lot of American films as well. The name escapes me. Is it Noah something?
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of movies. But someone can tell us the name later. And that's where we
in
see
the comments.
Yes, that's right. That's where we see that performance where, like you said, he collapses, and then the adult character played by Jeffrey Rush, and then, like you said, that speech impediment. And apparently, like that, because I remember watching this film in high school media, and we sort of were talking about it in class, and apparently Jeffrey Rush learnt that dialogue was all written for him. It wasn't necessarily him just going, it was actually all written, and he mastered that, and he practiced it for to get it down pat, and and that, and I might be wrong here, but I think I could be right. It was the first Australian actor to win an Oscar for Best Actor in an Australian movie playing an Australian character. I think it was the first. Because there's been Australian actors who've won Oscars, but they've played American characters or English characters, like and we say Russell Crowe's Australian, but I think he was actually born in New Zealand, and
he is a New Zealander, yeah.
And Mel Gibson, I think, lived in Australia for a while, but he was actually born in America, and all that. So Jeffrey Rush, Australian born, in an Australian film playing an Australian character. Just this film came out of nowhere in the 90s, and he won the Oscar, and it set his career off, and he's he did a lot of great signature roles after that. And and just a little shout out to a friend of mine, Chris Benson, who when he was young was an extra in this film. So if you're watching, Chris, we're just giving you a little shout out to your scene. I think it's when David is a boy, he's walking down, and there's all these other kids there with instruments, and there's Chris sitting there with an accordion, I think, and a big smile on his face. So Chris is the brother of a friend of mine who I worked with overseas. So little shout out to Chris and his little contribution to Shine. Well done, mate.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess in your own musical journey, Sam, did you have to sort of overcome any personal barriers or obstacles to get your music out, or to make it a part of your life? Because it's hard to do that when you've got a job and you've got a family and all these other commitments. Yeah. So do you feel like you've sort of overcome some barriers yourself?
It was difficult at the beginning, but now I think with social media, with YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, that spread, or if you like advertising your own music, it's slightly becoming a little bit easier. And sort of before it was more or less, if you want to be discovered, you have to go on these talent shows, Australia's Got Talent or whatever, all these kind of ridiculous TV shows. But now these days, you open up an account in YouTube or Facebook or Spotify or any of those applications, and your music spreads much quicker and much easier and more accessible, I guess.
Yeah.
to people.
So
But
there's
still,
really no excuses not to get started these days, is
no,
there? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
No, you're absolutely spot on, spot on.
for
You don't
sure.
have to. You don't have to go play in pubs, do gigs in bars or whatever, to
No.
promote your music. Nobody does that these days. So,
Yep. You can get
so
started online. It's definitely a way to reach a lot of people, and you never know who's going to be listening to your music or reading your stuff or watching your films. You
exactly,
know, you've
very
got to
true,
get it out there. You
very
know,
true.
there's always going to be barriers in life, but
Mm.
push through. And I think that's what David Helfgott does, and what the story of Shine is. It's about him overcoming that, and his purpose really was to master this piece of music and get all the accolades and the acknowledgement, which he does, I believe, by the end of the film. Like, he gets the
He
standing
does.
ovation and all of that, and yeah, from memory, if I remember it correctly. So yeah, a great choice, and a great film for anyone who's, I guess, wanting to be creative and is dealing with stuff at home or their own personal struggles. Is that, you can do it. This David
Absolutely,
Helfgott was a real guy, and he did
absolutely.
it. And if you look at how his father treated him, and
Mm.
the time of life it was, where it was even more
Mm.
difficult, I guess, to get out there. And yeah, so it's a very inspirational story.
Very inspirational.
And
Sure.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely one I'll need to go and rewatch again. It's been a long time, but you tend not to forget it once you've seen it. It's a very
No, it just sticks here, so it's a very nice movie. Yeah.
absolutely great choice. Cool. All right. Well, for your last film, this is something completely different, and I think we're going to make a lot of people very, very chuffed now, very happy to talk about such an iconic, loved movie from the 80s. And I can't wait. Yeah. So just tell us, man, who are we going to be talking about?
This completely different from the two movies I have. So this is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Yay!
Jeopardizes my ability to effectively govern this student body.
He does whatever he wants,
You know, as long as I've known him, everything works for him.
whenever he wants,
He's very cool.
and he never gets nailed.
Ferris can do anything.
Oh, he's such a sweetie.
Wake up and smell the coffee, Mrs. Bueller. It's a fool's paradise. He is just leading you down the primrose path.
Matthew Broderick.
Bueller. Ferris Bueller.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Because life is too beautiful a thing to waste.
Who doesn't love Ferris Bueller? Like,
it's
what just a legend of a character, and just like one of the best movies of the 80s. And yeah,
It's just a happy-go-lucky movie. It is. I mean, just you watch it and you just forget things and you just laugh and enjoy it, and it's
definitely
just an easy movie to watch as well. It's just and so many quotes that come out of it as well. And I think I can probably quote it, scene by scene, to be honest with you. Like, even though I haven't seen it for a long time, but it's just such an iconic, happy movie.
For sure, yeah. And look, you and I, we were born in the 80s, but we're more sort of kids of the 90s. So Ferris Bueller was a little bit before our time. But can you remember when you saw it for the first time, or who introduced it to you? Can you remember?
Yeah, of course. Might have been, I think, probably 1988, 89. My family just literally bought a VCR. If people, I don't know if people know about what VCR from this generation, but it's you play video tapes with it.
You can find one in your local museum. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And look, at the time, I think we only had like maybe 3 videos with 3 videotapes. It was Ferris Bueller. It was Romancing the Stone.
Right.
Which was Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner.
Yeah, good one.
And another kids movie was a kids movie. I think it was called An Arabian Adventure, starring a very sort of, I think, young Christopher Lee. If you know Christopher Lee, he was he's the guy who does, I think he does Lord of the Rings and a few other. So he's a very famous British.
He was
British
around.
actor.
He was around for years. He lived well into his 90s.
He
He was Dracula for a time being.
He was Dracula. That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very accomplished actor. Yep.
That's right.
So these were the 3 films you had on VCR and VHS.
And they were on repeat like hundreds of thousands of times. I mean,
that's it. And that's how we lived growing up, because like kids these days is like they can watch any movie anytime on their phone. We all can, but like they'll never understand that we had to go down to a video store and physically take the video off the shelf, take it home. Oh, if it wasn't rewound, we had to rewind it. And if we had an old VCR, it took forever. And you're sitting there patiently and it's going, and you're like saying, oh, please don't chew the tape. Please don't chew the tape. And then it starts, and then you're like, wow, this is an event. We're finally watching this film. And I remember having to go on the waiting list at the video store because there wasn't enough copies of the film to to go around and stuff. And yeah, it comes from that time.
It was an exciting time, like, you know, because
100%.
you kind of look forward to going to and checking out what are the new releases, what they have. The one thing that was really kind of annoying was if you return the video if you don't rewind the movie, I think you got a $2 something fee.
Oh yeah, yeah. So back then that was a lot of money.
Right.
Like that was the cost of renting another movie you would miss out because you didn't rewind the bloody tape.
Yeah, the movie from the beginning. Yeah. So it's it's really fun. It was the life was simple, you know, and
yeah,
it was kind of simple thing you kind of look forward to it, and yeah. And I guess
for anyone living under a rock, who is Ferris Bueller, and you know what's his day off all about? Yeah.
Look, I mean, I think it's everyone's dream, you know, in high school is, you know, is skip school. I think
100%. Yeah.
The Australian word terminology is WAG, you know, WAG
the
school,
WAG,
you know, WAG school. And you know, it's for, I mean, the movie itself is about him was a very popular kid at it, you know, in his school.
Extremely popular, yeah.
Very, very popular with everybody. And he fakes his own sickness and, you know, decides to take a day off. Of course, his parents respond it quite easily because he's a fantastic actor. He basically calls his friend. His friend is actually quite sick.
Yeah.
He wasn't sort of, you know, making it up as such, but he pushes him to come, you know, to come out with him, and then arrange some kind of prank call to the school to get his girlfriend out of school.
That's right. It's all very well orchestrated, isn't it? Yeah.
By faking her grandma's death.
Yep.
And they all basically go out and they drive. The character's name is Cameron. Cameron,
that's right. Yeah. And the girlfriend is Sloane.
Sloane, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sloane.
Yeah.
And they drive in Cameron's dad's 1963, I should say, Ferrari, California or something. I can't remember the name of the car.
Beautiful red car, yeah.
Beautiful red car. Into the town, and they spend the whole day in town. And they go to museums and they go to this fancy restaurants.
Yeah, they accomplish a lot in a day, don't they? Yeah,
that's right.
I saw this article recently saying a video, someone trying to disprove the Ferris Bueller's Day Off itinerary. Like, how the hell could they actually do all this in one day in a city like Chicago, which is massitive? And I think the thing that stuck out in my mind was, like, if this is a weekday when they're meant to be at school, why is there a massive baseball game going on? Because they go to the baseball, right?
Exactly.
But you know, you look past these things because it's a movie, and it's like it's all about the character Ferris, played brilliantly by Matthew Broderick, and just the lengths he goes to avoid going to school, and just the stories he fabricates about himself. And of course, the spanner in the works there is his sister, and who's onto him, and the principal who goes hunting for him and stuff. So you've got those two trying to find him and expose him and all this stuff. But he's always like one step ahead, isn't he?
No, exactly. It was, to be honest with you, it was like two movies. You know, you've got the day off, you know, enjoying the whole day off, and you've got this other movie, which is what if they actually stayed in school? What would happen? You know, you've got that economics teacher, you know, at the beginning, he's talking about voodoo economics, and everyone's sleeping. You know?
And he's like, Bueller, anyone, Bueller. So many iconic ones, isn't there?
And then the other teacher was explaining something about the meaning of the prison, and you've got the headmaster, Edward Rooney, who was such a serious guy, and trying to catch him.
His whole mission is to finally bust Ferris Bueller in action, and like,
I mean, that scene when his mom, he calls Edward Renner calls Ferris Bueller's mom, and he goes to her, "Do you know your son has been away 9 times?"
Yeah,
and the way he says 9 times,
9 times.
9.
And then the mum's finally like, hang on. Then she goes to his room and like he's orchestrated like this mannequin and a recording of snoring, and it's like it rolls over and she's like, oh, he's just asleep. You know, they're so blissfully unaware, aren't they?
No, yeah, no, so
You can learn
the
quite a
whole-
bit from Ferris, I think. Like if you had to set up this day off and get away with it, like he's got all the tricks, hasn't he? Like he
does,
he nails it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything was fun. I mean, the scene where he arranges Cameron to call Edward Rooney and pretends to be the father of Sloane.
That's right.
And he goes, and Edward Rooney obviously doesn't believe him, and he thinks it's Ferris pretending to be.
Yeah.
And then Ferris calls the other line.
Yep.
And there is this. I remember in the soundtrack, there's this bell icon, din din din.
Yeah.
And he picks up the phone. He sort of his eyes is closed. He goes, "Hey, how are you? I'm sorry. Oh, is it the whole thing was just sort of
yeah.
The way he orchestrated this whole I guess prank call to get Sloane to embarrass Edward Rooney at the same time.
Yeah, it's genius, isn't it?
It's just genius. Yeah.
And I think that's what we loved about the film being young, is it's about kids outsmarting the grown-ups, and like
That's right, yeah.
fighting the system of school, which is, an institution in itself, really, and fighting that system to get out and just go and live life, and that's what Ferris Bueller's all about. He's just like, I'm just going to live in the moment and enjoy myself, and wherever he goes, it's just a party. And I think, you've already mentioned a few of the scenes that you like, but I think probably the best scene in the film that always brings a smile to my face is where he's on the parade on the float.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he's singing, and then the Beatles song happens, and then the whole city just starts dancing and stuff. And it's like it's just going off, and it's just such a feel good, hilarious movie, isn't it? There's so many good scenes.
I mean that parade song is just, it really is nice because he's sort of saying to the world, I don't care, join me, enjoy life. He's singing, Twist and Shout by the Beatles, and he's singing Dankeschön. I think that's another sort of classic songs. And you've got these beautiful girls around him, in the middle of the street, and you've got those, you've got those people dancing on the stairs. So it's just kind of it's a really nice sort of feel good movie.
And there's a quote from it I love, and I'm keen to see what your thoughts are on this. I've actually referred to this quote Ferris Bueller has in one of my books, where he says, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Which is, I think he says that like twice in the film or something.
Yeah,
he says it right at the end. And so let's unpack this now. No, but yeah, that's kind of like the theme of the quote, right?
It's the theme of the movie, really. It's just, it's sometimes you just have to stop and think and look outside and enjoy life and enjoy
have some
friends,
fun.
Have some fun.
Even if you get in trouble, it's worth it, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you and I went to the same high school, and I think I know you were only there for a year, but were you there when our high school brought in that guy they called the Protocol?
No.
Were you there when they brought in the Protocol?
No.
So that might have been that, because you were there with us for year 9, the 1 year. I think it might have been when we were in year 10, 1998. And we went to this, for anyone who doesn't know, all our mates who are watching this will remember who the Protocol is. We went to this strict Catholic school called St. John's in Dandenong, and we were about a 5-minute walk from the shopping centre in the middle of Dandenong. And a lot of kids would skip school or leave school early and walk up to the shopping centre, right, the Dandenong Plaza. So the school was onto this. They were aware that this was happening. And they hired this guy who apparently was an Navy soldier or a Navy SEAL or something. That I don't know if that was true, or they just told us that to scare us. But they called him the Protocol. Like, no one really knew his name. It was like the Terminator. Yeah. And he was this guy, and he wore sunglasses, and he still had the Navy buzz cut, everything. And he was always chewing. He was this with his sonnies, right? And they instated this guy who would go and hang out the front of the shopping center and catch kids wagging, or like if we had an early dismissal or finished early for the day, if we went to the shopping center wearing our school uniform, we'd get told off. And the school actually hired this guy, you know, and it kind of just reminds me of that principal in the movie, who just like, he's on the hunt, you know, he's gonna find any student who's up to no good and just make their lives hell. So it kind of reminded me of that, you know, this guy, the protocol. But I heard years later, apparently he was a very nice guy. He was just, you know, doing his job. But who knows where he is now? I wonder. Yeah.
Now, I mean, that last scene when Edward Rooney is his pants are being completely destroyed by the dog, and he's just a piece of music that I always remember. I can't remember I think it's something Yellow. I can't remember the name of the band or the song, but it used a lot of synthesizers, I should say.
Yep.
And it goes like
yeah, that's it. That iconic music.
It's just such a good background music to this kind of scene. It really does. It just emphasizes the silliness of this whole situation at the end.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And any sort of younger viewers watching this who are like, Ferris Bueller, what are you talking about? Oh, just a quick shout out for the guy who made that film and a lot of other teen movies from the 80s, John Hughes, who really understood teens very well, the teens of the 80s, you know, The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink and all of these films, and a couple of other good ones, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains and Automobiles. I think, yeah, he really was the king of those films in the 80s. But Ferris Bueller is a good place to start, I think. And
Weird Science is another of his movies. Weird Science
as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
He did that. Yeah,
great films there, and really capture that innocence of being a teen in the 80s. It really was the coolest decade, I think, to be a teen or a kid. Like, my memories of it are a little bit foggy because we were born around 81, 82, around the 83 our age group. So I guess I remember the later years of the 80s, but and I had older sisters who sort of introduced me to a lot of the films of the 80s, so I was lucky in that way. But yeah, so such a great film. Just love it. Just brings a smile to my face, and
exactly
a great choice. Yeah. And well, you know, I think the three films in general, Sam, you've chosen are all great and all different. There's an element of music and how music's used in the films as well, which is obviously the common theme there for you, being a music man. And yeah, just sort of lastly, to kind of wrap up our chat, is there any other honorable mentions, any other films that maybe you were thinking of talking about, or anything you've seen recently or that you're looking forward to?
Well, actually, speaking of the 80s, I mean, to me, I mean, Karate Kid, you have to get a mention of Karate Kid.
Of course, yeah.
You know, it's such another iconic movie, and another inspirational movie of the sort of the underdog. And
definitely. Have you gotten into Cobra Kai, the TV spin-off?
Absolutely.
Oh, how good is it?
I love it. It's such a well done show.
Oh, it's the best. I can't wait for the final season. Yeah, I hope they do it justice. Yeah,
they do it justice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the angle they chose, you know, to start that show is a really good angle.
Yeah, oh, very clever.
From what's his name's point of view,
Johnny. Yeah,
Johnny's point of view.
Johnny Lawrence. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And some of your favorite film composers, like past or current, working today, like who are some of your favorites we can give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, Maurice Jarre, I mentioned before, he's quite good. John Williams, obviously, who did the Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Most recently, who was what's his name? I can't remember the name of the guy that did the what's the name of the movie?
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer is he's a Swedish composer, very young guy, or late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember his name on top of my head at the moment, but he did that, and he did also the Star Wars show on Disney. He's very revolutionary because he sort of uses the he uses the influence from rock music and the the chord progression from rock music into classical, and that's something sort of unusual or unheard of in TV and film compositions.
Yep.
But yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie.
Yes.
Listen to that soundtrack, because that soundtrack is just mind blowing.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I've seen Oppenheimer, and yeah, I was actually listening to the musical score of it on YouTube the other night while I was doing some writing and stuff, and just channeling the the genius of Oppenheimer and all that. So yeah, fantastic. And there's so many great composers out there and so many iconic scores, and and where can people find your music, Sam? We'll put a little link up here on the screen.
Yeah. So Spotify, just search for my name, Sam Mukhtar. You can also find me on SoundCloud as well. I've got Sam Mukhtar Music. I'll send you the link. You can share
no
it to the
worries.
screen.
The link is appearing on our screen right now.
Magically. And on YouTube as well. So I mean, the recording of the orchestra, I have full videos of that as well on YouTube.
Fantastic, yeah, and we're gonna share that now with our viewers to close out this episode, Sam's little opus. So thank you very much, Sam. It's been a pleasure having you on My Movie Story, mate, and so good to reconnect with you as well personally after all these years. And we've just been hitting off, and I'm looking forward to many more chats. And we'll go see a movie or something. It's not a mandate. It's just two guys who like movies, and we'll go watch a movie, talk about the music and that sort of thing. No
Sounds
dinner,
good.
nothing like that. Just we'll just go watch a movie. But thank you, mate. Thanks for being on My Movie Story. It's been great.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
All right, mate. Bye.
Bye.